Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class on Zoom. So we're having a class from Canto 1, Chapter 17, Punishment and Reward of Kali, and text 23. So I'll start with the chanting, and then we'll have the class following that. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Nithai Gora Chandra Nithai Gora Chandra Gora Hari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nithai Gora Hari Bo Nithai Gora Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nithai Gora Hari Bo Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahans Privadikacharya Stotra Satashushimara Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Privadikacharya Stotra Satashushimara Divine Grace Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananti Goti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai ISKCON founder Charya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shiva Shri Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glory to Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Namini. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Siddhatmani Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namini. Narayana Namaskritya Narunchevam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Vajirayat Nasya Prayesva Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhavadu Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 23. Atava deva mayayam nunam gati agochara chetaso vachashas chapi bhutanam iti nishchaya. Atava deva mayayam nunam gati agochara chetaso vachashas chapi Bhutanam iti nishchaya atava deva mayaya nunam gatir agochara chetaso vachasas chapi Bhutanam iti nishchaya. Hare Krishna. Anyone that wants to chant can unmute and chant now. Please unmute and chant.
अथवा देव मायाया नूनं गतिर्गोचरा चेतोऽसो वचश्चापि भूतानामिति निश्चयः. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Athava deva mayayam nunam gatiragochara chetaso vachasas chapi bhutanam iti nishchaya.
Jai. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? All right, word for word. Atava, alternatively. Deva, the Lord. Mayaya, energies. Nunam, very little. Gati, movement. Agochara, inconceivable. Chetasa, either by the mind. Vachasa, by words. Cha, or. Api, also. Bhutanam, of all living beings. Iti, thus. Nishchaya, concluded. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Thus it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. No one can estimate them by mental speculation or by word jugglery. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A question may be raised as to why a devotee should refrain from identifying an actor, although he knows definitely that the Lord is the ultimate doer of everything. Knowing the ultimate doer, one should not pose himself as ignorant of the actual performer. To answer this doubt, the reply is that the Lord is also not directly responsible, for everything is done by his deputed Maya Shakti, or material energy. The material energy is always provoking doubts about the supreme authority of the Lord. The personality of religion knew perfectly well that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord, And still he was put into doubts by the deluding energy, and thus he refrained from mentioning the supreme cause. This doubtfulness was due to the contamination of both Kali and the material energy. The whole atmosphere of the age of Kali is magnified by the deluding energy, and the proportion of measurement is inexplicable. Oma Gina Chiminangyasya, Gyana Gina Shalakaya, Chakshum Militam Lina, Tasmai Sri Gurave Nama. Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Utapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaisnavam Sha. Shri Rupa Sagajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam. Sadvaitam Avadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Scha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tata Kanchana Gourangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Krishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhibhya Eva Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirveshesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine. Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gora Shishe Namaha. Ananda Lilamaya Vigrahaya Himavi Divachavi Sundaraya Tasmi Mahaprema Raspadaya Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. Hare Krishna. So the translation again is, thus it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. No one can estimate them by mental speculation or by word jugglery. So this is a very important text talking about the Lord's energies. With our tiny brains, we can't conceive much. But through the instruction of a spiritual master, we're able to get a little sense of who Krishna is. We say a little sense because Krishna is unlimited. The energies are unlimited and also inconceivable. So this is a conversation that has gone on between Maharaj Pariksit and Dharma, the personality of religion, taking the shape of a bull. And Kali, the personality of Kali, has actually been attacking the personality of religion, breaking the austerity, cleanliness, and merciful pillars, which are the legs of the bull. And the last pillar left is that of truthfulness, and that is also being compromised in the age of Kali. Maharaj Pariksit is a king. So when he saw the bull in that distressful condition, and he being a pious king and a Rajarishi at that, a saintly king, he inquired from Dharma who had done that to him. Now, Dharma being very, very knowledgeable about what is what through spirituality, could have pointed out the culprit because he knew it was the personality of Kali that had done that. Yet he went through almost like a roundabout way of describing something in response to the question that Maharaj Pariksit had asked him. Rather than come right out and say the personality of Kali, he was aware that it could be the personality of Kali true enough on the face of it, but underneath, Krishna is the cause of all causes. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Nobody is at his level or higher than him. So everything that's moving is moving based on his inconceivable energy. Different energies act in different ways. He expands into Vishnu forms, and he is controlling each planet in the Vaikuntha Loka, in the spiritual world. Each planet in the material world has been given to a particular controller. Sometimes demigods control some planets. The whole universe is controlled by Lord Brahma. And of course, through Brahma, his deputies are the Manus. And in one day of Lord Brahma, there are 14 Manus. So they all have roles that they play. Now, the Lord's energies are inconceivable, and basically it's astounding, literally, if you think about it. Even with our tiny brains, we can have some sense, a small sense of the Lord's inconceivable energies. Now, this text says no one can estimate them by mental speculation or jugglery of words. You cannot understand the Lord by mental speculation. You can only understand the Lord when he reveals himself in a way that we can understand him and love him. And he reveals himself when we serve him from our hearts, devotional service, bhakti yoga. So from that, some understanding by the Lord's own mercy can be given to the devotee through the transparent by medium of the spiritual master. The bona fide spiritual master has been given so much and also been given a position where he can transmit Krishna's dictation. Krishna is king, and we are a servant of a servant of a servant. And therefore, being a supreme master, whatever he says and however he planned things to make ourselves happy and satisfied, we have to go along with them. It's just that simple. That's why he says in Bhagavad Gita that we surrender to him. Surrender to him. He is the object of love. He's also the source of love. Therefore, if we think about him all the time, we will develop love in our hearts for the Lord. And so that is our situation. And we also have a small amount of independence. So we may choose to go by the Lord's dictation, which connects us with his internal potency, or we may choose to do what we want to do, which connects us with the Lord's external potency. So one way or the other, we will be connected with the Lord, one of the Lord's energies. Happiness comes from connecting with bhakti, which is part of the Lord's internal potency. And sense gratification and dealing with material things and trying to make our own decisions connects us with the material energy, which puts us in delusion. So the personality of religion was aware that Krishna was the cause for all causes. Yet, since something had happened to him that was negative, when Maharaj Pariksit questioned him so that he could deal with the culprit, the personality of religion was very careful in dealing with the situation, the response, and those are given in the texts before this one. So we'll just do a little review of it. We are in text 23 now, but in text 18, so he starts, the personality of religion, Dharma, starts, O greatest among human beings. It is very difficult to ascertain the particular miscreant who has caused our sufferings because we are bewildered by all the different opinions of theoretical philosophers. So that's the angle that he started with. He still knew that Krishna was, of course, the underlying cause, but he wasn't going to point out that Krishna is the one that did this to me. And we'll talk a little more about that. That is being smart. So he said, "O Maharaj Pariksit, greatest among human beings, it's difficult to ascertain because on the one hand, we see Kali having done what he's done. But on the other hand, we also know that Krishna is the underlying cause of things that happen. Now, what should we then do?" He was in that situation until he said it's difficult to make sure that we know the particular person that has done this, because there are theoretical philosophers and they have different opinions. So then in the next text, he talks about the philosophers. Some of the philosophers, they deny all sorts of duality. They say one is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. That's one school of thought. Others say that superhuman powers are underlying things that happen. They are responsible. That's another school of thought. Others say that activity is responsible. And those who are gross materialists, they say nature is the ultimate cause. So they give 4 different reasons. Oneself being responsible, personal happiness and distress, superhuman powers being behind this actions that take place. People say activity itself is responsible. And some are saying that nature is the ultimate cause. So that's how he answered my Pariksit. And then he goes on to say that there are other thinkers who believe that no one can be sure of the cause of distress by argumentation or by imagination or by expressing it in words. So he said, since I can't give you a straight answer, but all of these philosophers thinking different ways about it, what's the cause, especially of distress? But of course, in the world, we have happiness and distress both. So then he tells the king, so other people are thinking about this. You are intelligent, so you also should think over this. So basically, Dharma tossed the question back to Maharaj Pariksit by saying that all of these basically multiple choices of answers, and since there can be one, and there's so many, which one is the right one? So I've put it out, and you, sage among kings, Raja Rishi Maharaj Pariksit, you judge for yourself by thinking over it with your own intelligence. So the Lord is behind everything. So we cannot figure out what the Lord is up to with our tiny brains. And 2, since we're nowhere near the intelligence of the Lord, nobody should ever think of blaming Krishna for anything. The other day, there was a class by His Holiness Chandamali Swami, and when he finished, there were a few questions, and a couple of them were in the chat. So this was Zoom also. And one person, a bhakta, he asked the question, to what extent should we believe Krishna, and to what extent should we sometimes not believe Krishna? So Maharaj immediately said, you cannot not believe Krishna. Never ever even think that way. It's not a question of belief. If you don't understand why things are happening, his energies are inconceivable. So since it's inconceivable, there will be some that we will not understand. For example, in this universe, Srila Prabhupada said, half of the volume of the universe, of this universe we're in, is water. Half of it is water. Then he said, you cannot see it. And true enough, we can't see it. But it says half of it is water. Where did that come from? That's from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vishnu form, in the Vishnu expansion. No one can estimate that. No one can use word jugglery to say, oh, we know why this is going on. No. Everything has a source in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we go along basically with his program, and that's all. Our tiny brains cannot figure out what the Lord is up to, and we should never blame the Lord for anything. We don't understand? Yes. You go to the spiritual master, and that's why it says, inquire from the spiritual master. Inquire submissively. That is, inquire with respect, and also offer service to him. Then he will be satisfied, be happy. You will get blessings from him, and he will explain whatever that you have that is a doubt or something that has to be explained a little more, shed more light on it. He would do that. When the spiritual master is happy, Krishna is happy. That's another way that Srila Prabhupada defined Yashat Prasad, Bhagavat Prasad. Krishna is happy, Guru is happy. When Guru is happy, then Krishna is happy. So for us, it's been broken down to, all right, so the Lord has inconceivable energies. We can't understand them all, but we can have guidance from the spiritual master. So we never blame the Lord for anything. For example, in the case of the Kurukshetra war, when the war was over, Bhishma, the great Bhishma, who was one of our 12 Mahajans, he was lying on a bed of arrows. And actually, not when the war was over, actually, he was down in the middle of a war. So after that, the war was still going on, even though he wasn't taking part because he was in the bed of arrows. But many of the Kshatriyas would come to him and report what had gone on that day. One day after another until the 18 days were all over. So in one situation, after the guru for the Pandavas, the military guru for the Pandavas, Dronacharya, was killed, the Pandavas and Krishna went to where Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, one of the Pandavas, the oldest, told Bhishma that Dronacharya had been killed. And Bhishma questioned how. So then Maharaj Yudhishthira described how it happened. And Bhishma was shocked. Bhishma was shocked because he heard from the answer of Maharaj Yudhishthira that Krishna had told Yudhishthira to lie to Dronacharya that his son had been killed. Ashwatthama had been killed, even though Ashwatthama had not been killed. Now, this was difficult for Dharmaraj, Maharaj Yudhishthira, to answer or to do, but he had to do. He tried, actually, because he doesn't like lying. So he said something about Ashwatthama being dead, but there was also an elephant called Ashwatthama. So when he mentions Ashwatthama, he was going to say the elephant also. But the way it's described in Mahabharata, and the way when I heard this again from Radhanath Swami, the elephant part was not heard by Dronacharya because Krishna blew his conch shell, making the noise deafening the ears of Dronacharya. So Dronacharya heard Ashwatthama was dead and been killed. And that's how Dronacharya got very, very, very distraught, gave up fighting, and this is how he got killed. So this report was given to Bhishma in the presence of all the Pandavas and the Supreme Lord Krishna himself. So first, the thing that Bhishma responded to was, you, Yudhishthira, told a lie? Yudhishthira told a lie? You? But you also have said that Krishna was behind you having to say that he ordered you to do it. So then Bhishma want to kind of question Krishna that why has, this knowing that Krishna can approach the death of anyone in all kinds of ways. Why was lies added to the strategy to get rid of Pranatad? But he stopped short because he realized he was questioning the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For our tiny brains, we cannot figure out what the Lord is up to. In this regard, sometimes, let me just say, His Holiness Chandramali Swami, again, we get guidance from Guru, has said, and I heard in one of his lectures not too long ago, that sometimes when somebody is doing something that is evil, that in some situations, we can use some things that are also not on the right path, literally. We use another strategy to get rid of that particular personality or stop that thing from happening. But when he said that, Chandramali Swami said that, he also said that we have to be very careful in doing that. Basically, if there's going to be any change in the way in which we do things, we have to get approval from the bona fide spiritual master. You have to ask. Otherwise, we can tell a lie, we can do this because Krishna said yes. But if we think like that, then Maya is going to stretch it and say, okay, well, but then Lord Shiva also drank the ocean of poison. Therefore, if we take ganja or something that's poisonous for our body, it's all right. Lord Shiva has showed the way, so we have to do that. No, we are not at the point of imitating. We follow directions. Don't imitate. Srila Prabhupada even said to his disciples, he says, in some points, he says, don't imitate me. Don't try to imitate me. If I say something, you do it. And if I'm showing how what I've said is done, then yeah, you could do that. Other than that, don't imitate me. So that is our position. The second point also about the Kurukshetra war, Arjuna, when he was talking to Krishna, he was making a case for the women whose relatives were the soldiers. He was making the case that if the soldiers get killed in the Kurukshetra war, then the women would be bereft of their husbands. The younger women would be bereft of their fathers, and the older, slightly older, would be bereft of their brothers. So husbands, brothers, and fathers are going to get killed, not to mention cousins and so on. They are all part of it. But Krishna wanted the war. So Krishna still encouraged Arjuna to fight. It was a religious war to establish Dharma back on the earth, but many people were going to be killed. And as it turned out, 640 million people lost their lives. Men, they lost their lives. So then the women were bereft of husbands, fathers, and brothers, and maybe cousin brothers, and so on. 640 million bodies were gone. So how do we understand that? Krishna's will is to be obeyed. That's all. There is some, of course, he spoke Bhagavad Gita, and then he described that these people are not really dying because the soul doesn't die. The body is the one that dies, but you could take another body for another life. So he explained the embodied living entity, the embodied soul in one life goes from, as I like to put it, small, medium, large. Small is a baby, medium is when you're youth, and then large is when you're grown person. But in the same way, when the body is no longer useful, then the person will go to another body, and therefore a sober person is not bewildered by any of this. So he tried to, Sri Krishna explained to Arjuna that the real person is the soul. And then he went on to explain the nature of the soul, Nahanyate Hanyamani Sarire, the soul cannot be destroyed in any kind of way. Yeah, no, and it's part and parcel of the Supreme Lord himself. So he used that situation of Arjuna's bewilderment to explain things that are in the Bhagavad Gita now, we benefited from. So Krishna has his own strategy and we play along with it. That is our situation. We should simply obey, trust, and surrender. And this is how we're going to be happy. We trust the Lord will lead us in situations and protect us as needed in the material world as well as the spiritual world. If we believe that, then we are in a situation where we won't have any issues. So Maharaj Rishabhadev, who's also an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has broken down ways in which a devotee can serve the Lord, the mentality that a devotee is supposed to have in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was speaking to his 100 sons. And first he says, you have to get guidance from an elevated or spiritually advanced master, highly elevated Paramhamsa. When we say our prayers, Prema Dvani prayers, Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa, Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajaka Paramhams and Parivrajaka to describe our spiritual master, the main spiritual master for ISKCON, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He is Paramhamsa and he is also Parivrajaka. There are 4 levels of sannyas: Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajaka, and Paramhamsa. So we'll go through it quickly. Kutichak is a situation where the sannyasi lives near the village or wherever he used to live. He's taken sannyas, maybe he's left Grihastha life, Vanaprastha life, but his wife is still there and his wife will take care of him, like bringing prasadam to him where he is. Bahudak is when that stops and now the sannyasi goes to different places and beg alms and beg, and he does his sustenance in that way and also preaches to the grihasthas where he gets support from. Parivrajaka is a sannyasi that travels and preaches, which is what's done by most of our spiritual masters. They go around the world literally preaching. And Paramhamsa is the highest, the most advanced stage, and that's when they usually would write books and their realizations and so on. Srila Prabhupada wrote a lot of books, 84 books actually, from what I'm told. So the sannyas will in fact help us. The spiritual master will help us if we go to him and trust that he's connected to Krishna, a representative of Krishna. So Maharaj Rishabhadev says we should accept a spiritually advanced spiritual master, an advanced one. And he will teach you to put your belief, your faith, and love in, and he says, in me, the Supreme Personality of God, because he was actually an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Then he also said, we should detest sense gratification. Now, why should we detest sense gratification? Sense gratification is satisfying our material senses. And when we satisfy our material senses, what happens is that we think more of that type of satisfaction. And at the time we're going to leave our body, we'll think of that type of satisfaction, what we like in the material world. And that would elicit another physical body, another birth in the material world. In the material world, we have a certain amount of material happiness, a certain amount of suffering, but actually it's all suffering conditions. Papa said, we don't know what real happiness is. So in the material world, we're all in a suffering condition. So if you take another body, then you come back to the material world, a suffering condition. And who knows what will happen by these politicians. who are poised to fight each other. So we should detest sense gratification and tolerate the pleasure and pain, material pleasure. But they like seasonal changes of summer and winter. They come, they go. That's the way it is in the material world. He also said, Maharaji Shabbadev says, give up the endeavor for sense enjoyment. Rather than do that, engage in the service of the Lord. So actually, happiness comes when we stop trying to satisfy our senses and turn our attention to serving the devotees, serving the spiritual master, and serving the deity. Engage in the service of the Lord. That's where happiness comes. He also advises, listen to discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and associate with devotees. Listen to discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is what the Paramhamsa devotees, the pure devotees, they do. Machita Magata Pranabodhantas Paraparam, Parasparam, Katayantas Channa Nityam, Tishanticha, Trumanticha. So it's in the scriptures that the pure devotees, their very existence, their life air is all about Krishna. They preach about Krishna. They have discussions about Krishna. And in doing so, they get very enlivened. So I'm just paraphrasing the actual text. They get enlivened that way. So it's there to teach us that when we also have discussions about Krishna, we're going to be happy. We're going to be enlivened. When we do Lord Chaitanya's program, Sankirtan Yagya, chanting Hare Krishna with different tunes, it brings happiness to the heart right away. And we can sing and we can dance. We can dance in town. We can dance in the temple and sing songs praising the Lord and chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. So we should give up the endeavor for sense enjoyment and engage in the service of the Lord. Maharaji Shabbadev also says, listen to the discussion about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is just what we discussed, and associate always with devotees. Why? Because devotees are the ones that are going to remind us of what we are connected with. Bhakti. Go to non-devotees, they're not going to say anything about devotion service. So it'll be a waste of time. More than likely, you're going to hear one thing after another about gossip, what is happening in the family and what's happening in the country and so on. Nothing about the Lord. Chant about the Lord and glorify the Lord. Another advice by Maharaji Shabbadev. Chant the holy name and glorify the Lord. Talk about the pastimes of the Lord. He also said, look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. Very important for us to remember that everybody is not the physical body. They are the soul. Therefore, we look at everybody that way. And some of us have the bad habit of looking down on those souls that are in the small and the tiny physical bodies. We're talking about ants and so on, and sometimes people don't care when they kill them because the physical body is so small and they just, they just basically forget the fact that there is a soul and a super soul in that body, just like there's soul and super soul in our bodies. So Maharaji Shabbadev says, look upon everybody equally on the spiritual platform. So that way we don't take life unnecessarily. And Jat Bharat was one good example of that. Jat Bharat, pure devotee of the Lord, was living incognito, didn't want people to know that he was that elevated. And in the farm, in the forest, he was seen by some servants of Maharaj Rahugan. Maharaj Rahugan was being carried in a palanquin, traveling in a palanquin. And they needed one more person to help to carry. And when these carriers saw Jat Bharat, they asked Jat Bharat to be part of it, but he played like he was unintelligent, dumb, mad, insane kind of person, but he had the physical body strength. So then he became part of it, carrying the palanquin. But he was an elevated devotee who was not about to kill ants by stepping on them. So whenever he saw ants crossing the path, he stopped. And then the others were still walking. And so that jerked the palanquin, and the king got concerned. The king questioned those who were carrying the palanquin, and they said, oh, this new person that we got is the one that keeps stopping and making us go out of step like that. So Maharaj Rahugan warned Jat Bharat, but when he continued to carry him, when he resumed carrying him, again, they got to a point where there were some ants on the road, and Jat Bharat again braked to let them cross. So Jat Bharat was looking at other ants that they are also souls just like him. So we look upon everybody equally on the spiritual platform. Maharaji Shabbadev Goswami says, give up enmity and subdue anger and lamentation. Give up enmity. It is very, very important here. And that brings us to this discussion today. The personality of religion could have been an enemy to the personality of Kali. But not only did he not even say to Maharaj Pariksit that it was Kali that was beating him. He didn't bring anything against Kali. He didn't say anything that was bad. He just went around saying, well, we can't have a direct answer because some people think this way, some people think that way, some people think this way. And he didn't even bring up the personality of Godhead being the underlying cause of everything that happens. Certainly was not thinking about enmity at all. So we should also take our example from that. So the personality of religion in the end was very, 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 very careful in how he answered the questions. And Maharaj Pariksit was told by the personality of religion, so you try to figure out what's happened also. Now in the text that's coming up, we'll see that Maharaj Pariksit handled it like a king should, because the king is careful to see for the protection of all of those that are good people in his kingdom, and also to chastise the miscreants. So he does that. So the next text coming up will show how Maharaj Pariksit handled the situation. And there's also a whole lot more to learn from it. So we'll stop here. Shira Prabhupada Ki Jai. So now you can unmute your phones. And if you want to make some comments, then please do, and talk about some takeaways. And if you have questions to ask also, you can do so at this time. Hare Krishna. Shira Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. So are there any questions or comments or takeaways? And if you do, then please unmute yourself. I'm going to stop the sharing. Okay. I'm not hearing anything, so that means you all understood what was talked about today. That's the assumption I'm going to make. And today, there's one more thing to talk while you're thinking about this. Today, Balaram Jayanti, the Supreme Personality of Godhead's first expansion. Krishna expands to Balaram, plenary expansion. So today we have celebration. I think it's starting at 6:30 in the temple. So please, for those of us that are close to the temple, please try to come for the program. It should be a very, very nice program this evening. Lord Balaram's pastimes will be talked about. And also today we're continuing the Julan Yatra. Today is the last day for swinging Sri Sri Radha Shari Bihari. So that would also happen this evening. So those are the announcements. Actually, Ansriya is not here. She's in the temple dressing Vitagora Chandra and also making other arrangements for this evening's program. Okay. Hare Krishna. All right, so we'll stop here then. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhibhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Vaishnav Thakur ki jai, Gaura Pramanande, Hari 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 Bo. It's okay, so have a nice rest of your week, and for some of you, we'll see you this evening in the temple. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Glory to Shri Prabhupada.